So happy to be sitting here with Jen Adams and Taylor Cummings, talking about all things lacrosse, and excited about Women's History Month coming up and how lacrosse has impacted us as athletes and as women, and excited to share our stories and just talk about the game we love so much. So Jen Adams, who is she? In my opinion, the best lacrosse player that has ever played the game. Taylor might concur with that. Having had the opportunity and privilege of getting beat by Jen on multiple occasions. When Jen started playing lacrosse, the whole game shifted. Anyone that played Maryland had to change the way they played the entire game because of Jen. Jen leveled up the game in a way that girls wanted to be her. You know, we joke about the fun buns now, but you know, you would go to a game and all these little girls would have their hair like Jen and want to be like Jen, and she was really the first female lacrosse player that had sort of that fan following and the excitement, and just dominant, but also incredibly humble. I think like she would completely dominate, and then we'd be off the field and she would just be fun, and normally you would just never know, like this woman is incredible, leading Australia to a gold medal, which had not been done in 20-some years, I think. You know, I know a lot of women's lacrosse players, but Jen Adams to me is women's lacrosse.
You know, it's easy for me to talk about Taylor. When I think of the greatest to play the game, it's unequivocally clear that it is Taylor. I think about what she came into the University of Maryland, obviously a very talented side, and I remember watching her for the first time and being just enamored by what she did over the entire field. And I think when you talk about a true midfielder who can impact the game at every single level, I'd watch her on the draw and be like, she is unstoppable. I'd watch her on offense and be like, she's unstoppable. I'd watch her take on matchups against opposition and be like, everyone wants that defender on your team, and always so quick to recognize the strengths of the people around her. And I think you talk about changing the game. I mean, to follow it up and have a business in lacrosse, but to really carry the torch, I think, and care so much about the future and care so much about leaving it in the right hands and making sure that we're advocates, not just for lacrosse players, but for, you know, women's lacrosse players and for the future of the sport. And every time I hear her speak, I hang off every word. Every time I'm around her, I am just motivated and inspired by what she does for the sport. And I think she continues to give. I'm sure long after she hangs up the cleats and the stick, she'll continue to give to this sport. And I think that's something that's so special and beautiful about women's lacrosse, the community that is built. And I think there is very few people that would be able to say, like, who has, you know, carried this sport into this generation, and it is without a doubt Taylor Cummings.
Gosh, if you had told me as like an 8-year-old that you would say those things about me, I could start to cry. So, wow. Okay. Whew. I first met you, Rachel, through the WPLL when we were just starting to make a professional women's lacrosse league that was sustainable and something that we could aspire to do. And as I got to know you and realize how, first of all, amazing you were as a player, being the only Tewaaraton winner to be a defender, winning national championships, and then to see you as this businesswoman who's a mom, who crushes life in all these different realms. I don't know if you realized the impact you had on us as this younger generation who looks up and wants to be you, wants to be the mom who can go crush soccer practice, and was such an incredible player and is carrying this game to the next generation to make it better for us and for the players behind us. You inspire me every day with your work ethic. You're always at the forefront of making the men's game better, making the women's game better, bringing eyes to the sport through our broadcasts, and that's what we need. Anything that our game has needed, you have stepped up to the challenge, both with your play and with your voice, and now with your advocacy, now that you're no longer playing, and you have really pushed our game to be where we all dream it can be.
And as a player who played against you,
yes,
I can, without a doubt, say Rachel was the toughest defender I ever came up against.
I believe it.
She also opted to use this wooden pole. I'm sure we'll talk about, like, you know, equipment and how the game has changed, but Rachel used a wooden shaft to her stick that I still have bruises from, I think. You were the toughest, most fierce competitor, I think, that has ever graced the defensive world.
Our college programs, how did we end up where we did? And we've got 2 Terps here, obviously, and there's a lot of Terp pride in general. And I admire, you know, obviously the Terps, you know, have beat up on people for a long time, but there was a lot of respect for the program and the coaches and the players that have come through it. How did you end up there from Brighton Lacrosse Club in Australia to College Park, Maryland?
Yeah, I always think it's funny. We came over, I was in the 1995 inaugural under-19 lacrosse team. We played actually at Bryn Mawr or Haverford in Philadelphia. And we came through and went to the University of Maryland on our trip. I was just turned 15, I think. I turned 15 over here. And we played a club game. It was against some fellow Australians that were playing for a Chesapeake team. And so I think Gary and maybe Cindy came out, but I definitely know Gary did, and watched from the sideline. And I clearly remember after them saying, "Would you want to come to college?" And I was kind of like, "Sure, all right." Spin it, 2 or 3 years later, and I'm getting that call. Do you want to come to the Maryland? And literally, I joke that I didn't have a recruiting process. I hear about it now as a coach. It's funny to me. I'm recruiting kids, and I'm like, I never went through this myself. I never had a chance to be recruited, but I got recruited by the one, and it was the right one. And I'm so glad I took that chance, and I'm so glad they saw something in me. But the University of Maryland was something special. I think to learn from Gary Gate to the enigma that is Cindy Timshall. And then over the years, Kathy Reese was an assistant there for a little bit. I had the good fortune of getting to play with her as well, but just people that shaped me. I wouldn't have been the lacrosse player I was, not just physically on the field as a lacrosse player, but the person I was. These friends and mentors and coaches that have driven all the decisions in my life, and really made me see that lacrosse can be a career.
There was not a whole lot of clubs when I was playing either. There was one tournament you got to play in with your local team. I did sort of the traditional recruiting route. I had, there's a couple schools I really was considering, but I wanted to play 2 sports, and the Ivies, it's a little bit easier to do that. So I went and visited Princeton, and one of my teammates from our club team was my host, and we had a great time and had a ton of fun, and it felt right. There's a magic that you feel like Princeton, and you probably feel this way about Maryland. When I pull onto campus at Princeton, I have a physical response. It's not nervous, but it's like this just excitement and feeling of this is home in a way. And Chris is from the town next to me growing up, and she just was. I don't, of course, could not have understood how special and incredible she was then, but I think the opportunity to learn from her and go to a great school and play sports, both sports that I wanted to play, and the team, it just felt right. It's really magical when you pick the right place and you find the right people, and I definitely feel that way too.
And coaches can shape your experience so much, I think.
Oh my gosh.
Chris is one of the most respected coaches in the game, and I mean, sure. As a player, you learn so much from her, but I think everyone, even from the outside looking in, she's always had that vibe about her, an energy about her that, you look and you respect, and it's genuine, and it's really cool for the sport. Yeah. I know I always love playing against her for that reason.
I would say the same about Kathy, and my recruiting process was a little different because Maryland was not on my list.
Really?
No.
Is that right?
No. So I wanted to go anywhere but here, because my soccer coach was a professor at Maryland, Robin Sawyer.
Yeah, okay.
So we would go do soccer, soccer ball girls. I was just always down there, and it's no, I don't want to go. And Kathy and Kenneth and Quinn at the time recruited me so hard for that fall before junior year and that summer. And I was like, nope, I don't want to go. It's just too close to home. It's not something. And my club coach, who is, other than Kathy, probably the most impactful coach I've ever had, was like, you need to go give them a chance. They have worked so hard, just at least go. And I looked at my mom as the bratty 16-year-old. I was like, this is a waste of gas. It's a waste of time. I don't want to go. And then that magic thing happened where I stepped on campus, and within 2 hours, I was like, I want to commit. I went from 0 to 100, and I went in the summer, so I met no teammates, I met no players. It was Kathy. That the culture and the people that they were trying to bring in just spoke to me, and it was a culture that I wanted to be a part of, where I wanted to win, but I wanted to be pushed, and I wanted to not have anything given to me.
Compare your college experience to what the college experience is now for players. As a coach, you have a pretty good idea of that, and what are the differences? What do you think has changed that you like, and what are some things that you wish sort of the players have now that you have?
Is so different in so many ways, but then in so many ways I'll come out to practice and I'm like, I can just, 20 years ago, I am you, sitting, stretching and having the same exact conversations, and like I can picture me and my teammates in a lot of those settings. But in so many ways the game has changed. Rules and the equipment. I mean, I have a photo in my office of me as back in the day playing in college, and literally I'm playing with a tennis racket. I still to this day don't have a pocket, and the girls will pick up my stick and they're like, no one can play with this, but it's what I knew. And so now they have these big pockets, and they're able to handle the ball in these incredible ways, but I simply can't use that stick because it's not how I grew up. But a lot of those changes, but social media, I mean, it has changed everything about college, to be honest with you. I think that is probably the biggest influence, I'd say, as a changer. Just the things out there, there's so much more pressure. I imagine, back in the day, like just trying to imagine the pressure and the expectation and the things that went with it. I mean, when I was in college, we went through a phase, certainly my senior year, I remember this, but our sports psychologist working with us in our program about reading no media, about making the story our own and not allowing outside influence to input that. And I think that would be impossible in this day and age. It's just at their fingertips. And so I imagine players are seeing that on such a grander scale. I just can't imagine myself. I try to, and me and my teammates, we'll chat about it all the time, and we'll thank God that was not there when we were in college. I'm very thankful for the experience I had and the way I had it. And I think, it's great to see lacrosse on TV and things, certainly more so than where it was when I was a player, and I'm dating myself a little bit, but back in the day. It's not where I think I ever envisioned it to be. I thought we would be in such a better place than we are right now. I think it's been very slow moving. I think we should be in such a different place in terms of, with the way social media and stuff is, that we're still not getting airtime, and we're still not able to showcase our incredible athletes at the college level. The fact that we have to fight to get our championship games on TV, and it's a constant battle. The fact that, it isn't equal in that way. And so, there have been some changes in that regard, but I am shocked at how far behind I still think we are with how fast we've moved forward in a lot of other areas of technology and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. Like, the visibility of players has gotten so high, but the visibility of our sport, I don't think has matched that. And as a player, I was kind of right in that beginning of social media. Instagram came out my senior year of high school, so like we were discovering Vine and Twitter and all the things to try to figure out what our coaches didn't follow so we could put our own stuff on. And I think as a player, that created so much pressure, because it wasn't until my sophomore year really that you're like, oh, there's a lot of kids here taking photos and then posting them. And that spring fell me into a deep dark hole with some personal issues myself. But I can't imagine, I graduated 6 years ago. It's gotten 5, 6, 7 times more in your face. Kids are now able to sign deals and be the public faces of brands, and the pressure that's coming with that's hard to figure out how they handle that as a college kid who's going through personal things, who's going to school, who's trying to just pass out calculus and like get a degree, and then to go perform. Like, we're just putting so much pressure on them, and that's something that I went through it, but I'm so grateful that I didn't have that amount of pressure on me.
There was a purity to it. Like, you didn't know really what anybody else was doing, and it didn't matter. And like, I think that has lost a little bit, because we all know in social media you can make anything look the way you want it to look. So there's, I think, for girls particularly, that comparison and that feeling like, okay, I'm not good enough because look at what she's doing, or look at the team she made. I think that pressure has to be hard. I also think I laugh about the gear. Like, we had cotton sweats as our warm-ups and like they didn't even have our numbers on them. And we like, whatever season happened before us, we would get them, and like they had holes in them, and like we would laugh about it but not actually care. It was funny, right? The gear was terrible. And I look now and I go to games like, they have so much cool stuff. Is there something from your early experience, or just your experience as a player, that frustrated you or motivates you to change? Like, what did you experience as an athlete that you want to be different now, and like that motivates you to keep being involved in the game? There's nothing specific that frustrates me about when I played, because I don't think I knew better. Like, I didn't know that I should be upset that, there wasn't the opportunity, or that there wasn't, our games weren't on TV, or that people weren't watching us or caring about us, that brands weren't investing in the sport until you came along the way that they should have been. So I look back now and think, wow, our experience could have been different. Could I have, after college, like been Taylor Cummings and started a business and stayed in lacrosse? Maybe not, but I think now thinking, that to me is like a missed opportunity potentially, in terms of the game being invested in the way it should have been all along. I mean, like, you're talking to Denise Westcott, I'm sure the women that played before us laughed at us when we were playing about all the opportunity we had. So I just think it's just like making sure that we know better and we demand better.
I think, every spring the schedules come out about what's on TV and what's not. And when I was in college, I didn't pay attention. Like, I was just excited to go compete. And then you start to kind of go from the outside in, and you realize how much of a disparity there is. And then for me, that brought me back to, like, our Final Four experiences with the men and women were so vastly different, and what sponsors would give us as gifts, where we were playing, all the accommodations. Like, you start to realize, wow, there is a really big disparity in how the NCAA is treating its athletes, how we as females are treated by other people, by the media. And that, my senior Final Four was the first time where I was kind of like on the outside, but you're also afraid to say anything because you don't want to get in trouble and you don't want to speak ill of your school or of the NCAA. And you just start to realize how big of a difference there is once your head's out of the sand a little bit, because when you're in it, you're just grateful to be playing. You got to worry about national championships and winning. I wasn't worried about how many people were watching or if the time slot was convenient. And now I think with social media, what you're starting to see is a lot of the players are starting to realize how different things are and are starting to kind of fight for themselves too, which is awesome.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I feel like I look back and I kind of am frustrated at myself that I was an innocent bystander. I didn't know differently, and I wish I had. I wish I could have used, whatever leverage or something to be able to speak on behalf or advocate for, some of the changes to have happened quicker and sooner. Certainly the rules sometimes were frustrating back in the day. And
I mean, we had no boundaries.
We had no boundaries. My kids, I tell our players that we had no boundaries. No, like, you didn't play back in the ancient. I'm like, no, we had no boundaries. Like, they're like, so how did you play the game? Like, with no boundaries. Like, you could.
It was my first year of lacrosse
run
with
anywhere.
No boundaries.
Yeah.
First year.
I remember a moment in overtime in the national championship game, and I missed a pass, and it was going out of bounds, which now would be a turnover, but I was just faster than the person behind me, and I got it back, and I was like, that is wild.
So
like, if you were
strange.
faster, you didn't need to catch your throw, because you could just beat them to the line.
And the stopping on the whistle, I mean, still, or even into your, it seems so archaic now, when it wasn't that long ago that we played without boundaries, that we played stopping on every whistle and playing kind of freeze tag. And I think just a lot of those things. I mean, when I had the opportunity post-collegially to, get on some of the rules committees and things like that, being able to advocate for what I hope and think are positive changes in the women's game. But I am frustrated when I look back, just I didn't know those things as a player in college when, you maybe had a little bit of leverage, or post-college for those first couple, the sweet spot, the couple years where you are still a name maybe, or you have the ability, to speak and for people to listen. And I don't think I used that in the right ways, but I just didn't know. And I wish now, going back, I could change that. But it is really now really passing the torch and making sure, your Taylor Cummings and then the next generation know that they should be asking for those things, and that it's a good thing to advance the sport.
You think about where we want the game to go now, and we're going to talk a little bit about where the game is now, and what your biggest challenge is with the game now, as you see it.
I mean, we touched on it. For me, the biggest challenge now is just, we have these incredible athletes. The game is exciting. It's fun to watch. Getting people who aren't necessarily within the lacrosse community, because I think there is that following, both on the men's and the women's side, do really see it. A lot of, our guy friends who play or are really invested, and they really enjoy the women's game as well. And there's a great partnership in that and a great community within lacrosse. But to grow it beyond that, to get people that aren't necessarily lacrosse people to love the game and see the game and just enjoy watching it. I think it's a fun game to watch, but for that to happen, you need to nationally, you know, get out on that media. You know, you have to have TV exposure, and you have to be able to have those opportunities for someone to be flicking through and catch a women's cross game and stop and maybe just spend a couple minutes and then maybe get invested in it. The pro is so important, the rules to keep advancing, but for young women to not, you know, for us, we went through college and it was like, I hope I make my national team, because every 4 years maybe then I still have a chance to play the game. We joke all the time now that our big, you know, hoorah outside of college was playing for Team Toyota or playing for a club team that was very casual and a lot of fun and competitive, but we're going down to these, you know, beach tournaments and things, and it was a social kind of thing, and so to make your national team was the thing. But the thought that down the road, you know, people might be able to do this for a living, like they do in other sports, to think that we can go away to an Olympics and get on that world stage and to get lots of other countries playing the game and loving it and growing in that way, I think is the direction we have to go.
As a professional player sitting in a hotel watching the game before me or after me, be able to go on the TV and actually turn it on without a streaming thing in a hotel was like a huge moment.
Yeah.
And then we could look down and we're like, this is sad, because there's 100 basketball games on right now. There's cornhole, there's football. And you know, that's something, and like that's something that like we all hope we get to, is that it's a regular thing. We don't have to like close our eyes and kind of do a silent prayer that more than 10 games of the college lacrosse season are broadcasted.
So we've talked about a little bit about the past, where the game is now, and the progress that it's made. What are your hopes for the future of lacrosse?
I'm personally so excited. This Olympic vision and dream, and I joke all the time, I'm like, I will go and be a water person. I will be there regardless. You know, I'll be a fan in the stands when lacrosse makes it to the Olympics. I think, you know, I understand there's a lot of pushback. A lot of people are worried about the integrity of the game and making it to the Olympics, but I think us making sacrifices to the rules or the way the game is played in order to get it there, I think about, you know, maybe coming from, you know, a place like Australia where the game is smaller, for us to be able to field a team and go to the Olympics, and for us to have Olympic recognition, or what a lot of people don't know is that can enable us to get government funding where we can't right now. So for our sport to grow, for other countries' sports to grow, you know, to be able to, you know, if you're traveling and you're somewhere like, you know, drop a bunch of sticks and just let them play. And I think that's kind of the idea, is we all grew up playing pickup lacrosse and loving that. It's what grew us into the players we are. And so if we can kind of attach that game to the Olympics, and you can drop a bunch of sticks in South Africa or India and they can pick it up and love the game and get it going, we need global exposure. That's the future. So the Olympics is so exciting to me, I'm sure for all of us, and Taylor's probably still going to be playing, and still a true two-way midi at you know, age 50, winning gold medals at the Olympics probably, but I think that's huge. I think it's the biggest thing on the radar right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think about watching the Olympics and I watch gymnastics, like I am 100% invested. I know nothing about gymnastics, and to me that makes me so excited, because the thought that somebody can go watch lacrosse and know nothing about it and just be so invested in it, to me that's what we need. And that's what I hope is little kids in India or throughout Europe or Brazil or wherever are like, this is so cool, I want to go do it. Like, I would love to go to gymnastics. I can't. I know that. I'm too tall and way too old. But like, I sit there and I'm so passionate about something that I've never done and that I know nothing about. I know nothing about what they're doing, except it looks really cool and I wish I could do it.
I want to thank you both for joining me today. It's been an incredible conversation. We're joking we could really do this all day.
Seriously.
And it's been a ton of fun, and just thank you, and look forward to hearing more from both of you in the sport and beyond.
Thanks, Rach.
Thank you.